Good morning, everyone. We are learning Mishna is Harah. We are in Perek Gimel, Mishnah Yud, Chapter 3, Mishnah 10. I'd like to dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Mr. Shalamis Rabinowitz, Shalamis Bas Rabbi Yaakov Eliezer. Hanoitel sa'ar mi'isas chitim. Someone takes a sourdough from a dough made from wheat flour, and he put it into a dough made of rice. Sourdough is used to help make the dough rise. In this case, the sourdough is from wheat, which means it's sourdough that has an obligation of challah. And the dough made out of rice doesn't have an obligation of challah. But that's the mixture. The mixture is where we have the sourdough made from wheat that has an obligation of challah being put into the rice dough to make it rise. So, im yeshba tam dagan chayeves b'challah. If the dough has the taste of the wheat, of the grain of the wheat, it's chayev in challah. This is something that we had before. And even if the majority is made from rice, nonetheless, if the taste is the taste of the wheat, then the entire dough is considered like wheat. There's an obligation of challah. But that's only if the wheat sourdough gives some kind of, it gives a taste, a wheat taste to the dough. But otherwise, p'tura, it's going to be exempt. Otherwise, if it doesn't give a tam, it doesn't give any kind of taste, then the majority of the rice dough will nullify the minority of the wheat sourdough, and there'll be no obligation at all to separate challah. So now the Mishnah asks a question. We had a previous Mishnah, Mishnah 8, that spoke about a case where somebody took sourdough from a dough that challah wasn't separated from, and was put into a dough that challah was already separated from. And basically there we see in the Mishnah that the fact that there's no stipulation about giving a taste or anything like that. We know if that Mishnah means any amount of the sourdough that is tevel, that goes into the dough that was separate, that challah was separated from, and is exempt from challah, it's going to forbid it. And we have to deal with that sourdough of challah that's in there. What happened to the point? Our Mishnah says you need a taste before you have to be concerned about it. So the Mishnah says, Im kain lama abru hatevel isek halshu. If so, where did our sages say that tevel, that's something that is tevel? Let's say in our case, challah wasn't separated from it. Isek halshu, that it has the ability to forbid no matter how small of an amount is in there. That is min b'minai. When we're talking about two of the same species, the Mishnah ches, the sourdough and the dough that challah was taken from were both wheat doughs. They were both the same kind of dough. So when it's min b'minai, if it's the same species in itself, and in another one, that's where we say that any amount of tevel is going to make it forbidden. But if it's not in its same kind, if it's a different species, like in our case where you have wheat getting mixed into rice, then the only time the tevel is going to forbid, even if it's the minority of this mixture, is if it is nice and tam, if it gives taste. If it gives taste, then we recognize the taste. The entire mixture now becomes like what the taste is, which is the taste of wheat. And although the wheat would be the minority, it's not going to become nullified to the majority rice. But that's only if we're talking about two different things. Now, the explanation behind this difference is the following: that when the sages instituted that tevel, that again, untithed grain or dough that challah wasn't separated from, when they decided that they were going to do that, again, according to Torah law, it doesn't. That's not so. It would become batel, become nullified. The sages enacted that any amount of tevel is going to forbid the whole thing. They said that based on another halach, another law that applies to truma, and that is that according to Torah law, if you have a pile of grain, but you have to separate truma from it. So according to Torah law, how much you have to separate to fulfill to be considered I separated truma, and then the rest of it isn't tevel because of truma anymore? The answer is, according to Torah law, you can take one kernel, and that's enough to do truma. The sages instituted it should be the proper way is at least 1/50th. So therefore, Torah law that says that one kernel can count as truma, the Chachamim said, corresponding to that, one kernel that is not truma can forbid an entire mixture. If one kernel can be truma, then one kernel can be tevel that will affect another what it gets mixed into at that whatever ratio it may be. But that only applies though if it's starting from that point of I can take one grain and take care of a pile and take care of the entire pile, or I can take care of another pile, is only if it's the same it's the same kind, the same species. I can't separate from one species to another. I can't separate truma from wheat for barley. Can't do that. So therefore, being that the whole starting point, which is the fact that one kernel can be truma for something else, is only when the two things are from the same species. So corresponding to that, when we say that one kernel or any little bit of tevel is going to forbid things, that is again only corresponding to where the one kernel can act as truma, which is for its own kind, for its own species. Once we're talking about two different kinds, where that law wouldn't apply, the one kernel couldn't help from one thing for the other thing. So too, when we have a mixture of one species into another species, then the little bit doesn't count, and it will be nullified in the majority. We continue with the laws of Lashon Harah in the Chavetz Chaim, Klal Yud, chapter 10, Sif Ches, paragraph 8. So the previous paragraph of the Chavetz Chaim said that if you know that the person won't listen to your rebuke, you don't have to rebuke him, you can go tell people. But Chavetz Chaim said you got to make sure in front of 3 people so that it shouldn't look like you're, backstabbing him because you just want to say this, but you don't want him to hear it. And that people would suspect you that if you're afraid of him hearing it, maybe you're not telling the truth. So Mishna Ches reads, this only applies where you're not really afraid of that person that you are reporting on. But if the problem is, if you're afraid that if he gets back to this person, you're telling others what he did, that he's going to harm you, in that situation, the Chavetz Chaim says it's possible that one could be lenient and to tell others over what was done wrong, even not in front of 3. Meaning 3, as we've said, is the amount of people that it's going to get around, and it's going to get around to everyone, including the person you spoke about. If you're concerned about that because he could come and harm you, Chavetz Chaim entertains the possibility that in that case, if again the other 7 conditions are met for why you're telling this to others, you'd be able to tell it to others, even not in front of 3. Now, Sif Tes, paragraph 9. Now, let's say the person who is telling over what someone else did against somebody else is someone that is well known to be a person who does not favor others. He is not going to if he has something to say to a person, he's going to say it. And everybody knows the kind of person that when he's saying not in front of the person, he would say in front of the person. Also, he's well established amongst people that he is a truthful person. Then you'd be able to tell people about what this person did when you cannot rebuke him first. You can go straight to those people and tell them, even though it's not in front of 3. This person we just said is well established as a person who is not afraid of people, and he's a truthful person. The fact that he's not saying in front of 3, they will not suspect him of either, again, being a chaynef, which means looking like a friend face to face, but in the back you're speaking badly about him, or for a person who's not truthful. His intention is, again, to stand for the truth and to help the person who has been hurt, and to put down these kinds of actions in front of others. Even if you don't have to, in any of the cases we just said that you don't have to in front of three, but don't forget all the other conditions still have to be met. Now, one last paragraph about this. But this is Sif Yud, paragraph 10. The whole idea about when you're allowed to tell others about what someone wronged someone else, or about how a person sinned against God, meaning it's a mitzvah, it's an act between man and God. Essentially they're the same. But when it comes to telling others about a sin that someone did between him and God, you are not able to tell people over, even if all the 7 previous conditions would be met. It's only if you saw that he has done this many times intentionally. It has to be something that everybody knows is forbidden. Meaning it's something that everybody knows you're not allowed to do. Then when we say that, if the other 7 conditions are there, you can tell other people about it. Now in that situation, again, the possibility of helping someone as a sinner himself, or again, to show people that this kind of behavior is unacceptable and they should be influenced by it. So even if let's say you have a good intention to tell it, whatever it may be, you may not say it over to people. If we're talking about, again, a person transgressing against God alone, so to speak, didn't hurt anybody else there, that's only if you know that he is a repeat offender, he's doing it intentionally, and it's something that everybody knows is forbidden. Have a wonderful day.